Hi. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the talk that we had planned for GDC. But we do have some super exciting news about PS5. And who better to bring that to you than the one and only Mark Cerny. Without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jim.
There's like nobody here because of the coronavirus.
There will be lots of chances later on this year to look at the PlayStation 5 games. Today, I want to talk a bit about our goals for the PlayStation 5 hardware and how they influenced the development of the console. I think you all know I'm a big believer in console generations. Once every 5 or 6 or 7 years, a console arrives with substantially new capabilities. There's a lot of learning by the game developers, hopefully not too overwhelming, and soon there's games that could never have been created before. Now, it used to be that as a console designer, you'd somehow intuit what would be the best set of capabilities for the new console, and then build it in complete secrecy. For the PlayStation consoles, that period lasted through PlayStation 3, a powerful and groundbreaking console, but also one that caused quite a lot of heartache, as it was initially difficult to develop games for. So, starting with PlayStation 4, we've taken a different approach, roughly centered around 3 principles. The first of these is listening to the developers, which is to say that a lot of what we put into a console derives directly from the needs and aspirations of the game creators. We definitely do have some ideas of our own, but at the core of our philosophy for designing consoles is that game players are here for the fantastic games, which is to say that game creators matter. Anything we can do to make life easier for the game creators or help them realize their dreams, we will do. So, about once every 2 years, I take a tour of the industry. I go to the various developers and publishers, sit down, and discuss how they're doing with the current consoles and what they'd like to see in future consoles.
The probably being is just going to be them explaining what the hell
reaching the
is
bulk
their
of the game creators
backing behind it.
To well over 100 people at something like 24 publishers and developers. And it is incredibly valuable. By the way, the feature most requested by the developers, that was an SSD, which we were very happy to put in the hardware, but a lot of problem solving was required. I'll be doing a deep dive on the SSD and surrounding systems later on in this talk.
Okay, good.
It's also key to make a generational
They're going to show the look of it, I
keeping
bet.
the console sufficiently familiar to game developers. I think about this in terms of balancing evolution and
Yo, Overays, what's up?
Now, with PlayStation 1, 2, and 3, the target was a revolution each time with a brand new feature set. That was great in many ways, but time for the developers to get up and running got longer with each console. In the past, I've called this time to triangle. Here's what I had for those 3 consoles.
1 to 2 months.
To be clear, I'm not talking about time to make a game.
Balancing evolution and revolution.
Ambitious, and it may take them 6 years or so to realize.
Hey, yo, Epic, thank you the $5.
What I'm talking about is that dead time before graphics and other aspects of game development are up and running, and trying to minimize.
And another one. And another
On the other
one.
hand, if we're trying to reduce that dead time to 0, that means the hardware architecture can't change at all. We're handcuffed. We need to judge for each feature what value it adds and whether it's worth the increase in developer time needed to support it. So with PlayStation 4,
they're about to show the
we were able
PlayStation
to
5
strike
look.
a pretty good balance between performance and familiarity. We got required learning back to PlayStation 1 levels. With PS5, the GPU was definitely the area we felt the most tension between adding new features and keeping a familiar programming model. Ultimately, I think we've ended up with something under a month.
Under a month.
Speed. That feels like we're striking about.
So they want to like update it every month. Is that the thing?
I'll go into detail later today about our philosophy with the GPU and the specific feature set that resulted from it. It's also very important for us as the hardware team to find new dreams, by which I mean something other than CPU performance, GPU performance, and the amount of RAM. The increase in graphics performance over the past 2 decades has been astonishing, but the amount of RAM. The increase in graphics performance over the past 2 decades has been astonishing, but there are other areas in which we can innovate and provide significant value to the game creators, and through them, the players. That's why the SSD was very much on our list of directions to explore, regardless of what came out of the conversation.
The guy on the left, what is he doing?
And publishers. The biggest feature in this category is the custom engine for audio. That's today's final topic. The push for vastly improved audio, and in particular, 3D audio, isn't something that came out of the developer meetings. It's much more the case that we had a dream
I want a trailer,
of what
that's for
might
certain.
be possible
I want to look
5
at the
years from
console,
now,
though.
and then worked out a number of steps we could take to set
The beginning is
us
going to be
up.
boring because he's going to explain a bunch of stuff.
So here again are the 3 principles. The first being
The 3
enabling
principles.
the
Yes,
desires of
this is like
developers
I'm
to
at a
drive
school
the
lecture.
hardware design. To
But
me,
I'm actually-
the SSD really is the key to the next generation. It's a game changer. And it was the #1 ask from developers for PlayStation 5. As in,
Should have
we
gotten some
know it's
food.
probably
I didn't realize
impossible,
that he was going to be
but
going
can we
ranting
put
on about
an
this.
SSD in it? That was a discussion we were also having internally. It was clear that the presence of a hard drive in every PlayStation 4 was having a positive impact. A lot of things that would simply have been impossible at Blu-ray disc speeds were now possible. At the same time, though, in 2015 and 2016, when we were having these conversations, developers were already banging up against the limits of the hard drive. And a lot of developer time was being spent designing around.
Everyone spams some Z's in the chat.
I want to focus
I understand,
in
though.
on
He's
just
explaining. You
one number
can't
here,
fault him.
which is how long it takes to load a gigabyte of data from a hard drive. The difficulty being that hard
Someone just
drives
tweeted,
are
"This
neither
is weird."
particularly fast nor flexible. If all your data is in one block, which is frankly not very likely, you can load 50 to 100 megabytes a second, depending on where the data is located on the hard drive. Let's assume it's on the outer edge, which means loading a gigabyte takes 10 seconds. If you compress your game packages,
They
you
revealed
can
the specs,
fit more
though.
data
Why
on
haven't they shown it?
VHS,
There's
and
people
also
tweeting about the specs
effectively
on
boost
Twitter.
your hard drive read speed by the compression ratio. We support zlib decompression on PlayStation 4 that gets you something like 50% more data.
600,000 people are watching right now.
Higher effective read
Butch.
speed. Unfortunately, though, it's highly likely that your data is scattered around in various files on the hard drive, as well as sourced from multiple locations within those files.
Thank you the $4
so
Epic.
lots of
This will
seats are needed at
MP
2
exam.
to
Hey, thank you the 4.
50-ish milliseconds each. My rule of thumb is that the hard drive is spending 2/3 of its time seeking,
Everyone's spamming some
and only
Z's.
1/3
That's
of
fine.
its time
I don't
actually
understand any of this.
loading.
1 gigabyte divided by
Putting
100
all that together,
megabytes divided by
a gigabyte is
1.5
very
times
roughly
3
20
equals 20 seconds.
to load
I'm
from
learning
hard.
math.
Now, a gigabyte is not much.
I'm learning
Games
math
are using
again.
5 or 6
Bro, I've
gigabytes
taken
of
2
RAM
courses
on
in college.
PlayStation
I'm
4,
done
so
with math,
boot
bro.
times and load times can get pretty grim. Or to put that differently, as a player, you wait for the game to boot, wait for the game to load, wait for the level to reload every
Yes, they're
time
talking about
you
the loading
die,
screens.
and you wait
Fast.
for what is euphemistically called fast travel.
Fast
All
travel.
of that leads to the dream. What if we could have not just an SSD, but a blindingly fast SSD?
Oh god, the math equation
we could
again.
load
We're gonna learn this
5
1 gigabyte by 100
gigabytes a
megabytes
second from
by
it,
1.5
what would
times 3
change?
equals 20 seconds.
Now, SSDs are completely different from hard drives. They don't
Bandwidth,
have
5
sinks as
gigabytes.
such.
Ooh.
If you have a 5 gigabyte a second SSD, you can read data from 1,000 different locations in that
Seek
second,
time
pretty much at speed.
instantaneous.
As for time to load a gigabyte, this is next gen we're talking about, so memory is bigger. Instead, we should be asking how long to load 2 gigabytes. And the answer is about 1/4 of a second. I mean, that's amazing. We're talking 2 orders of
Load
magnitude,
time,
meaning very
0.27
roughly
seconds,
100
2
times
gigabytes.
which means
Ooh.
at 5 gigabytes a second for the SSD, the potential is that the game boots in a second. There are no load screens. The game just fades down while loading a half dozen gigabytes and fades back up again. Same for a reload. You're immediately back in the action after you die. And fast travel becomes so fast it's blink and you miss it.
Talking about the load
As
screens.
game creators, we go from trying to distract the player from how long fast travel is taking, like those Spider-Man subway
So fast
rides,
travel is gonna be
to
like-
being so blindly
and load screens are gonna be
fast
like-
that we might even have to slow that transition down. Pretty cool, right? But for me, this is not the primary reason to change from a hard drive to an SSD. The primary reason for an ultra-fast SSD is that it gives the game designer freedom. Or to put that differently, with a hard drive, the 20 seconds that it takes to load a gigabyte can sabotage the game that the developer is trying to create. I think almost all of us in the room have experienced this, maybe in different ways. Say we're making an adventure game and we have 2 rich environments where we
Whoa,
each
we're playing a
want
virtual
enough
video game.
textures and models to fill memory, which you can do as long as you have a long staircase or elevator ride or a windy corridor where you can ditch the old assets and then take 30 seconds or so to load the new assets. Having a 30-second elevator ride is a little extreme. More realistically, we'd probably chop the world into a number of smaller pieces and then do some calculations with sight lines and run speeds like we did for Haven City when we were making Jak 2. The
Jak
game
2.
is 20 years old. but
Announced
not
Jak
much
5.
has changed since then. All
four,
those
check
twisty
four.
passages are there for a reason. There's a whole subset of level design dedicated to this sort of work, but still, it's a giant
Haven City, I remember
distraction
that.
for a
Oh
team
my
that
God.
just wants to make their game. So when I talked about the dream of an SSD, part of the reason for that 5 GB a second target was to eliminate loads, but also part of the reason for that target was streaming. As in, what if the SSD is so fast that as the player is turning around, it's possible to load textures for everything behind the player in that split second? If you figure that it takes half a second to turn, that's 4 GB of compressed
Bob
data
Ross
you
of
can load.
Gaming.
That sounds about right.
Thanks for the $2, nobody.
Anyway,
I haven't seen
back
you in a
to
while. How are you?
Another strategy for increasing effective read speed is to make big sequential chunks of data. For example, we might group all the data together for each city block. That removes most of the seeds.
This is weird, though. I'm not lying.
But
I'm
there's a
trying to
downside,
understand what he's
too,
trying to say.
which is
There's
that
a lot of
frequently used data is
explaining.
included in many chunks and therefore is on the hard drive many, many times. Marvel's Spider-Man uses this strategy, and though it works very well for increasing the streaming speed, there's a massive duplication as a result. Some of the objects like mailboxes or news racks are on the hard drive 400 times. What I'm describing here are things that cramp a creative director's style. Either level design gets a little bit boring in places, or the data is duplicated so many times that it no longer fits on the Blu-ray disc. And you end up with hard limits on the player's run speed or driving speed. The player can't go faster than the load speed from the hard drive.
I'm
And
trying to
finally,
understand
I'm
one
sure
word.
many
Does
of you
anybody
have
understand what he's
noticed that after
saying?
a patch download, a
No, I'm
PlayStation
looking
4
on
will
Twitter,
sometimes take a
and
long
everyone's
time
like
to
me. They're like,
install
what the hell is this?
That's because when just part of a file has been changed,
Original
the
file,
new data
changed
can be
portions,
downloaded pretty
HDD.
quickly. But before the game boots up, a brand new file has to be constructed that includes the changed portion. Otherwise, every change would add a seek or two. Even so, you can occasionally see this happening on game titles. They start to hitch.
This
once
is
they
the
get
explanation of EMC2.
with an SSD, though, no seeks. So no need to make brand new files with the changes incorporated into them, which means no installs as you know them today. There's yet one more benefit, which is that system memory can be used much
RAM,
more efficiently.
8 GB.
On PlayStation 4, game data on the hard drive feels very distant and difficult to use. By the time you realize you need a piece of data, it's much too late to go out and load it. So system memory has to contain all of the data that could be used in the next 30 seconds or so of gameplay. That means a lot of the 8 GB of system memory is idle. It's just waiting there to be potentially used. On PlayStation 5, though, the SSD is very close to being like more RAM. Typically, it's fast enough that when you realize you need a piece of data, you can just load it from the SSD and use it. There's no need to have lots of data parked in system memory waiting to potentially be used.
Contains data for
different way
next
of
1
saying
second
that
of
is that
gameplay.
most of
Low
RAM
latency,
is
high
working
bandwidth
on the
access, in
game's
some
behalf.
ways more like RAM.
This is one of the reasons that 16 GB of GDDR6 feels right for PlayStation 5. The presence of the SSD reduces the need for a massive
I don't
generation
understand what
of
he's saying, though.
size.
And another one.
So back to the dream of
We
the
got
SSD.
bamboozled in
Here's the
math
set of
class.
targets. Boot the game in a second.
This is like game
No load screens.
tech.
Design
Oh, here we go.
freedom, meaning
Ultra
no
fast
twisty
boot, no load
passages or
screens. This
long
is what you should have
corridors.
summed it up in the
More
beginning.
game on the disc.
Ultra
no
high
game
speed
on the
streaming.
SSD. And
Duplicate
finally,
game data.
those
No long
patch
patch installs.
installs.
Yes,
The
please.
reality, though, is that the SSD
Oh,
is
no,
just
not-
one
no, no,
piece
come
of
on,
the
you-
puzzle. There's
No.
a lot of places where bottlenecks can occur in between the
SSD.
SSD and the game code.
Check
that
and load
uses the data.
management. File
You can see this
I/O,
on
mapping,
PlayStation 4.
coherency,
If I use an
decompression.
SSD with 10 times the speed of a standard hard drive, I probably see only double the loading speed, if that. For PlayStation 5, our goal was not just that the SSD itself be 100 times faster. It was that game loads and
100.
streaming
Ooh.
would be 100 times faster. So
100 times
every
faster.
single potential
It's gonna be like no
bottleneck
load
needed to
screens
be
ever.
addressed. And there are a lot of them. Let's look at check-in and what happens when its overhead gets 100 times larger. Conceptually, check-in is a pretty simple process. Data is loaded into system memory from the hard drive or SSD. It's examined. A few values are tweaked to
Con, your
check-in,
4.0 GPA
and then
to
it's
figure this
moved
out.
to its final location. At the
I almost have a
SSD speeds we're
4.0.
talking about,
I got a
that
4.0 in
last
high
part,
school.
Moving the data, meaning
I got like a
copying it
3.5
from
in
one
college right
location
now.
to another, takes roughly an entire next-gen CPU core. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If all the overheads get 100 times
Explanation
larger,
epic.
it will cripple the frame
And
rate as
another
soon as
one.
the player
And
moves,
another one.
and that massive stream of
Can't
data
admit this
starts
guy's got
to
hairstyle, right?
SSD. So to solve all of that, we built a
Custom
lot of
flash
custom
controller?
hardware, namely a custom flash controller and a number of custom units in our main chip. The flash controller in the SSD was designed for smooth and bottleneck-free operation, but also with games in mind. For example, there are 6 levels of priority when reading from
Yeah,
the
so basically faster load,
Priority
no
is
load
very
screens,
important.
Ultra
You can
HD
imagine
speed
the player
streaming, day
heading
duplicate
into
game
some
data,
new
no long
location
patch
in the world,
installs.
and the game requesting a few gigabytes of textures. And while those textures are being loaded, an enemy is shot and has to speak a few dying words. Having multiple priority levels lets the audio for those dying words get loaded immediately. On one side, that flash controller
12-channel
connects to the
interface. What is
actual
he
flash
talking
die
about?
to supply the storage. To reach our bandwidth target of 5 gigabytes a second, we ended up with a 12-channel interface. 8 channels wouldn't be enough. The resulting bandwidth we've achieved is actually 5.5 gigabytes a second. With a 12-channel interface, the most natural size that emerges for an SSD is 825 gigabytes. The key question for us was, is that enough? I mean, it's tempting to add more, but
I'm about to make a tweet. I'll make sure I can retweet it.
And we have a responsibility to our gaming audience to be cost-effective with regards to what we put in the console. Ultimately, we resolved this question by looking at the play patterns of a broad range of gamers. We examined the specific games that they were playing over the course of a weekend or a week or a month, and whether that set of games would fit properly on the SSD. We were able to establish
Please tell me
that
the PS5
friction
is trending.
caused by
It's not.
reinstalls or redownloads would be quite low. And so we locked in on that 825 gigabyte size, while also preparing multiple strategies so that those who want more storage can add it. I'll go through the details in a moment. Back to the flash controller. On the other side, it connects to our main custom chip via 4 lanes of Gen 4 PCIe. And inside the main custom chip is a pretty hefty unit dedicated to I/O. Before we talk about what that does, let's talk compression for a moment. PlayStation 4 used zlib as its compression format. We decided to use it again on
right, I had to make a
PlayStation
tweet.
5, but on my 2017
Shall I
tour of
retweet that?
developers, I learned about a new format called Kraken from
Thanks for the $2.99K.
It's like
His wig's going out.
zlib's smarter cousin. Simple, similar type
He's showing a
of algorithms,
Kraken!
but about 10% better compression, which is pretty big. That means 10% more game on the UHD Blu-ray
Okay, 10% more game, good, good.
SSD. Kraken had only been out for a year, but it was already
Kraken.
becoming a de facto
I'm trying to
industry
understand.
standard. Half of the teams I talked to were either using it or getting ready to evaluate it. So we hustled and built a custom decompressor into the I/O unit, one capable of
The
handling
Kraken.
over
That's
5
what I remember out of
gigabytes
this.
of Kraken format.
Yeah, I
input
thought the
data.
audience was fake, but it's real.
After decompression, that typically becomes 8 or 9 gigabytes, but the unit itself is capable of outputting as much as 22 gigabytes a second if the data happen to compress particularly well. By the way,
Everyone's
in
saying
terms
it's
of
boring as
performance,
fuck.
That custom decompressor equates
Damn.
to 9
Y'all are
of our 32
savages.
cores. That's what it would take to decompress the Kraken stream with a conventional CPU. There's a lot more in the custom I/O unit, including a dedicated DMA controller. The game can direct exactly where it wants to send the data coming off of the SSD.
Ayo,
This
thank you.
equates to another
Fez Hex.
Zen 2 core or 2 in terms of its copy performance. Its primary
I/O
purpose
complex
is to
GPU
remove
CPU.
checking
I mean, I
as a
know
call
some of
point.
this. Kraken
There's 2
decompression.
dedicated I/O coprocessors and a large RAM pool.
On
These
chip
aren't Zen
RAM.
2 cores. They're principally
you'd have to be,
direct
like,
a
really
variety of
knowledgeable
custom
to know all
hardware
this.
around them. One of the coprocessors is dedicated to SSD I/O. This lets us bypass traditional file I/O and its bottlenecks when reading from the SSD. The other is responsible for memory mapping, which I know doesn't sound like anything related to the SSD, but a lot of developers map and remap memory as part of file I/O, and this too can become a bottleneck.
All right, thank y'all for
There
liking
are
and retweeting that. I
coherency
appreciate it.
engines to assist the coprocessors. Coherency comes up a lot in places. Probably the biggest coherency issue is stale data in the GPU caches. Flushing all of the GPU caches whenever the SSD is read
GPU caches, what am I learning? It's like I'm in a
really hurt the
computer
GPU
design
performance.
class.
So we've implemented a gentler way of doing things, where the coherency engines
The cache
inform the
scrubbers.
GPU of the overwritten address ranges, and custom scrubbers in several dozen GPU caches do pinpoint evictions of just those address ranges. The best thing is, as a game developer, when you read from the SSD, you don't need to know any of this.
Good.
You
I don't need to know any.
that
Not
your
a game
data is
developer though, but
compressed. You just indicate what data you'd like to read from your original uncompressed file and where you'd like to put it and the whole process of loading it happens invisibly to you and at very high speed. Back to the dream. Thanks to all of that surrounding hardware, our 5.5 gigabytes a second really should translate into something like 100 times faster I/O than PS4.
Okay,
and allow
100
the
times
dream
faster. I
of
like that.
No load screens and super fast streaming to become.
Okay, you've already summed that up. We get
Having
it.
said that,
Yeah.
expandability of our SSD is going to be quite important. Flash is costly, and you may very well want to add storage to whatever we put in the console. Now, the kind of storage you need depends on how you're going to use it. If you have an extensive PlayStation 4 library and you'd like to take advantage of backwards compatibility to play those games on PlayStation 5,
Wanna hear me
a
snore?
large external hard drive is ideal. You can
It's about
leave
50
the
minutes.
games on the hard drive and play them directly from there, thus saving
Where's
the price
we've learned
of
about
SSD
scrubbers and
storage for your
krakens
PlayStation 5 titles.
and math
Or you can
equations so
copy your
far.
active PlayStation 4
But at least
titles
it's
to the
summed up,
SSD.
though.
If your purpose in adding more storage is to play PlayStation 5 titles, though, ideally you would add to your SSD storage.
Yes, I
You
want
will be
high storage on this,
supporting
yes?
certain M2 SSDs. These are internal drives that you can get on the open market and install in a bay in the PlayStation 5. As for which ones we support and when, I'll get to that in a moment. They connect through the custom I/O unit just like our SSD does. So they can take full advantage of the decompression, I/O coprocessors, and
Decompression
all the other
I/O
features I was talking about.
compressor.
Here's the catch, though. That commercial drive has to be at least as fast as ours. Games that rely on the speed of our SSD need to work flawlessly with any M2 drive. When I gave the Wired interview last
Saturate
year, I said that the
PC
PlayStation
LE
5 SSD
3.0?
was faster than anything available on PC. At the time, commercial M2 drives used PCIe 3.0, and 4 lanes of that capped
The
out
audience
at
has to be
3.5
like,
gigabytes a second.
they have to know
In
this
other
all this
words,
stuff, bro. They'd be
PCIe
sleeping.
3.0 drive can hit the required spec. M2 drives with PCIe 4.0 are now out in the market.
Saturate
We're getting
PCLE
in,
4.0.
samples and
The
seeing
PS5. Okay, that's
4
the
or
PS3,
5
PS4,
gigabytes a
PS5,
second.
I think.
By year's end, I expect there will be drives that saturate 4.0 and support 7 gigabytes a second. Having said that, we are comparing apples and oranges, though, because that commercial M2 drive
Apple
will
and
have its own
orange?
architecture, its own flash control,
Now we're learning-
and so on. For example, the NVMe specification lays out a priority scheme for requests. that
This
M2
guy's like
drives
touching
can
his
use.
face on the left.
And that scheme is
He's like,
pretty nice. but
coronavirus,
it only
hello,
has
hello.
2
I mean, was
true
this,
priority
is this
levels.
man thinking?
Our drive
Don't,
supports
there's
6.
people right around you,
You
man.
can hook up a drive with only 2 priority levels, definitely, but our custom I/O unit has to arbitrate the extra priorities rather than the M2 drive's flash controller. And so
This
the
man's
M2
spreading
drive
coronavirus,
needs
I'm telling you.
speed to take
And
care of
another
issues
one.
arising
And
from a
another
different
one.
approach. That commercial drive also needs to physically fit inside of the bay we created in PlayStation 5.
The
with
audience,
M2
do you
drives.
guys think the audience is
Unlike
fake?
internal hard drives,
I think it's
there's
fake.
unfortunately no standard for the height of an M2 drive. And some M2 drives have giant heat sinks. In fact, some of them even have their own fans. Right now, we're getting M2 drive samples and benchmarking them in various ways. When games hit beta as they get ready for the PlayStation 5 launch at year end, we'll also be doing some compatibility testing to make sure that
Is the audience
architecture of
fake? I'm trying to figure that
particular
out.
M2 drives isn't
Does
too
anyone think it's
foreign for
fake?
the games to handle.
It might be.
Once we've done that compatibility testing, we should be able to start letting you know which drives will physically fit and which drive samples have benchmarked appropriately high in our testing. It would be great if that happened by launch, but it's likely to be a
Me
a
trying
bit
to figure out
faster.
what's
So
going on in math
please
class.
Hold off on getting that.
Ron
M2
J, thanks for
drive
following Twitter,
until you
dude.
hear from us.
I know, Phoenix,
Back
thank you.
to our principles. Balancing
principles again.
Evolution and revolution is the second of them. This was definitely a recurring theme. with
They're
the
fake.
GPU.
Audience is fake.
We need new GPU features and capabilities.
Yeah, it's fake.
If we
They're
only
moving
have more
around, though, but I'm
performance,
not
it's
sure.
Really a new generation
It's hard to
of
tell. I
console.
think they're real.
Of course,
I think.
many of these capabilities result in more performance. That's part of why a PlayStation 5 teraflop is more powerful than a PlayStation 4 teraflop. But we aren't just looking for the performance. We also need the ability to do something with the GPU that could not have been done before. And we need higher performance per watt. Every time we double the performance of some GPU component, we don't want to find out we've doubled the power consumed. and
My
the
tweet on Twitter is already blowing up because people
but
are
at the same
relating with me,
time, We
right?
have to make sure the GPU can run PS4 games, and we have to ensure
Backwards
that
compatibility.
the architecture is easy for the developers
Yes.
to adopt.
That's what I want to hear.
Now, Backwards compatibility was handled masterfully by AMD. They treated it as a key need throughout the design process.
So PS5
As our
backwards
solution to
compatible?
adding new features without blindsiding developers, we made sure that if there were new significant features, it would be optional to use them. The GPU supports ray tracing, but you don't have to use ray tracing to make your
At least I
game.
understand that.
The GPU supports primitive shaders, but you can release your first game on PlayStation 5 without making
The audience is like the scenery from Home Alone.
Before I get into the capabilities of the GPU, I'd like to make clear 2 points that can be quite confusing.
New features, higher efficiency.
First, we have a custom AMD GPU based on their RDNA
There's so
2
I've heard the word
What does that
GPU
mean?
probably a million times now.
AMD is continuously improving and revising their tech. For
that
RDNA 2, their goals
Processing
were,
unit,
roughly
global
speaking,
processing unit.
to reduce
what it
power
is?
consumption
If
by
I remember correctly.
re-architecting the GPU to put data close to where it's needed,
You tricked
to
us.
optimize the GPU for performance, and to add a new, more advanced feature set.
Oh, I can't imagine
But
how
that
toxic
feature
the
set
comments
is
are.
malleable, which is to say that we have our own needs for PlayStation.
I
and
feel like
that
I
can
should look at the
factor into
comments, but
what
I
the
won't.
AMD roadmap becomes. So collaboration is born. If we bring concepts to AMD that are felt to be widely useful, then they can be adopted into RDNA 2 and used broadly, including in PC GPUs. If the ideas are sufficiently specific to what we're trying to accomplish, like the GPU cache scrubbers I was talking about,
Cache
then they end
scrubbers,
up
there it
being
is. We're
just
scrubbing like a car.
If you see a similar discrete GPU available as a PC card at roughly the same time as we release our console, that means our collaboration with AMD succeeded in producing technology useful in both worlds. It doesn't mean that we as Sony simply incorporated the PC part into our console. This continuous improvement in AMD technology means it's dangerous to rely on teraflops as an
RDNA
absolute
2
indicator
flop
of performance, and CU
Cost
count should be avoided
PS4
as
flop,
well.
RDNA
In the
2
case of
CU.
CPUs, we all understand this. The PlayStation 4 and PlayStation
Cross
5
CU.
each have 8 CPUs, but we never think that meant the capabilities and performance are equal. It's the same for CUs. For one
I have
thing,
no
they
idea,
became
though.
Much
I mean,
larger
I guess they're
over
showing
time.
everything good at the
Adding new
ending,
features
right?
means adding lots of transistors.
Am I right?
In fact, the transistor count for a PlayStation 5 CU is 62% larger than the transistor count for a PlayStation 4 CU. Second, the PlayStation 5 GPU is backwards compatible with PlayStation 4. What does that mean?
Everyone's gonna be my
to
face
achieve
now.
Backwards compatibility
LOL, I
is
relate.
to put the previous console's chipset in the new console, like we did with some PlayStation 3s. But that's, of course,
Okay, here we go. Backwards
extremely
compatibility,
expensive.
good.
A better way is to incorporate any differences in the previous console's logic.
I can
into
understand
the
this.
new console's custom chips, meaning that even as the technology evolves, the logic and feature set that PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro titles rely on is still
PS5,
available
PS4
in backwards
Pro.
compatibility modes. One advantage of this strategy is that once backwards compatibility is in the console, it's in. It's not as if a
PS5
cost
native
down
mode.
will remove backwards compatibility like it did on PlayStation 3. Achieving this unification of functionality took years of efforts by AMD, as any roadmap advancement creates a potential divergence in logic. Running PS4 and
Someone
PS4
just compared
titles
him to
at
Justin
boosted
Bieber.
frequencies has also added complexity. The boost is truly massive
Oh
this
my
time around,
God.
and some game code just can't handle it. Testing
Someone
has to be
compared him to
done on a
Justin Bieber,
title
this guy
by title
talking.
basis.
Like old
Results
Justin
are
Bieber with the.
excellent, though. We recently took a look at the top 100 PlayStation 4 titles as ranked by playtime, and we're expecting almost all of them to be playable at launch on PlayStation 5.
Yes. Good, I
With
understand
regards
that.
to new
Good.
features, as I said, our strategy was to try to break new ground,
Geometry.
but at
This
the same
is
time
math.
not to require
I gotta
use
read the
of
comments,
new
hold on.
GPU capabilities. For more than a decade, GPUs have imposed a restriction on game engines.
Boring.
Software
Sounds like
handles
game.
vertex
Show us
processing,
game.
but for the
GTA
most part,
6.
dedicated hardware is responsible for the triangles and other
God, the
geometry
comments
that
are
vertices
terrible.
form. That means it's
There's
not
already
possible to
13K
do even
dislikes.
Basic optimizations, such as
This is so
aborting
boring.
processing of a vertex if all geometry that uses it is
Xbox is getting clapped.
PlayStation 5 has a new unit called the Geometry Engine, which
Z's.
brings handling of triangles and other primitives under full programmatic control. As a game developer, you're free to ignore its existence and use the PlayStation 5 GPU as
God, the
if it were
comments
no
are
more
terrible.
capable than the PS4 GPU, or
That's kinda
you can
what I
use this new
expected.
intelligence in various ways. Simple usage could be performance optimization, such as removing backfaced or off-screen vertices and triangles. More complex usage involves something called primitive shaders, which allow the game to
only
synthesize
20 minutes
geometry
already.
on the
Hey, Lead
fly
Star.
as it's being rendered.
Hopefully there is one, Hall. There's nothing confirmed.
Using primitive shaders
So
on
basically, in the
PlayStation
human
5
words,
will
Sony has
allow
confirmed the
for a
PlayStation
broad
5 will
variety of
play all
techniques,
4 PlayStation
including
4 games on
smoothly
it.
varying
That's a
level of
W.
detail, addition of
So that's
procedural
basically what
detail
they
to
just
close-up
explained.
objects,
So
and
there is
improvements
backwards
to
compatible. All your
particle
PS4 games will
effects
be
and
playable on
other
the
visual
PS5.
special effects. Another major new feature of our custom RDNA 2-based GPU is ray tracing.
So any
using the
PS4
same
game you have
strategy
can
as
play on the
AMD's
PS5.
upcoming PC GPUs. The CUs contain a new specialized unit called the intersection engine, which can calculate the intersection of rays with boxes and triangles. To use the intersection engine, first you build what is called an acceleration structure. It's data in RAM that contains all of your geometry.
That's good.
There's a
That's good.
specific set of
At least I
formats
understand
you can
that.
use. They're variations on the same BVH concept. Then, in your shader program, you use a new instruction that asks the intersection engine to check a ray against the BVH. While the intersection engine is processing the requested ray triangle or ray box intersections, the shaders are free to do other work. Having said that, the ray tracing instruction is pretty memory intensive.
Take a shot
it's
every
good
time he
mix
says
with
GPU.
logic-heavy tasks.
Bro, I'd be
There's
dead.
of course no need to use ray tracing. PS4 graphics engines will run
Audio,
just
global
fine on
illumination,
PlayStation
shadows,
5.
reflections,
But
full ray
it
tracing. Now
presents
we're
an
learning about
opportunity for those interested.
picture,
I'm
maybe?
thinking it'll take less than 1 million rays a second
Ray
to have a
tracing.
big impact on audio. That should be enough for audio occlusion and some reverb calculations. With a bit
Be nice
more
if we
of
got
the
Last of Us
GPU
story
invested in
trailer,
ray
another one,
tracing,
just a
it should
teeny
be
little
possible to
sneak
do some
peek. That'd
very
be so nice.
global
Even some
illumination.
other game, I don't care. Give
Having
us
said that,
something.
Adding ray-traced shadows and reflections to a traditional graphics engine could easily take hundreds of millions of rays a second, and full ray tracing could take billions. How far can we go? I'm starting to get quite bullish. I've already seen a PlayStation 5 title that's successfully using ray tracing-based reflections.
PlayStation 5
in
title. Okay, how about
complex
you tell us what that
animated
title
scenes
is,
with
please?
only modest
I'd like to
costs.
know.
Another set of issues for the GPU.
Nope, we're not going to
involve
explain any of
size
that
and
game or
frequency.
anything. We're just
How
going to
big do we
explain the
make the GPU,
performance.
and what frequency do we run it at? This is a balancing act. The chip has a cost, and there's a cost for whatever we use to supply that chip with power and to cool it. In general, I like running the GPU at higher frequency.
Oh, you said
Let me show
GPU
you
again.
why. Here's
Shots
two
again.
possible configurations
Just start.
for a GPU.
I
roughly
dare
at the
someone.
level
Oh
of the
god, if you
PlayStation 4
did
Pro.
that, if you took a
This
shot
is
every
a
time you
thought
said that
experiment.
GPU,
Don't
you'd
take
be
these
dead.
configurations too seriously. If you just calculate teraflops, you get the same number. But actually, the performance is noticeably different.
From the bottle.
Teraflops is defined as the computational
I don't know if
capability
PS3 and
of the
PS2 are
vector
backwards
alien.
compatible with it,
That's
though.
just one part of the GPU.
They didn't confirm that,
There are a lot of other
far as I
units.
read.
And those other units all run faster when the GPU frequency is higher. At 33% higher frequency, rasterization goes 33% faster. Processing the command buffer goes that much faster. The L2 and other caches have that much higher bandwidth, and so on. About the only downside is that system memory is 33% further away in terms of cycles. But the large number of benefits more than counterbalance that. As a friend of mine says, a rising tide lifts all boats. Also, it's easier to fully use 36 CUs in parallel. than it is to
Everyone is
fully use
roasting him on
48
Twitter.
CUs. When
I'm gonna give this
triangles
man
are
a
small,
shot.
it's
He
much
still
harder
has
fill all
time to
those
get my.
CUs with
I know it's a
useful
deep
work.
dive, so I understand
So
there's gonna be a lot of
to be said for
complex
faster,
wording. I didn't know
assuming
there was
you
gonna be
can
this
handle
much though.
resulting power and heat issues, which frankly we
This is more
haven't
like
already
for
done the best
developers
job
and
at.
people that know
Part
this
of the
stuff.
reason for that is, historically,
You
our
woke up
process
early for
setting
this?
CPU
Oh, rip.
and GPU frequencies has relied on some heavy-duty guesswork with regards to how much
Okay,
electrical
we've got a
power goes
car,
consumed
we got an
and how much heat will
apocalypse
be
symbol,
produced as a
we've got a
result inside of the
gun, we've got
console.
a bow and
Power
arrow,
consumption
and an
varies
axe.
a lot from game to game. When I
Lowest
play
power
God of War on
consumption,
the PS4 Pro,
highest
I know
power
the power
consumption.
consumption is high just by the fan noise. But power isn't simply about engine quality. It's about the minutia of what's being displayed and how. It's counterintuitive, but processing dense geometry typically consumes less power than processing simple geometry, which is, I
This is more for people who understand this kind of stuff, and you have to be pretty damn smart to understand this, or at least be knowledgeable with all this.
Pro heat up so much. Our process on previous consoles has been to try to guess what the maximum power consumption during the entire console lifetime might be, which is to say, the worst case scene in the worst case game, and prepare a cooling solution that we think will be quiet at that power
Oh, the
level.
cooling. Yeah, they're talking about
If
the
we get
fan.
it right, fan noise is minimal.
Hi.
If we get it wrong, the console will be quite loud
Are
for
we
the
getting
higher
food?
power games, and there's even a chance that it might overheat and shut down if we misestimate power too badly.
You get Chipotle?
PlayStation 5 is especially
closed?
challenging because
So
the CPU supports 256-bit
You didn't check? I could check if they have
that
catering. They
consume
probably
a
still
lot of
do.
power. These are great here and there,
I'd have
but
to look, though.
presumably only minimally used. Or are they? If we
They
plan
might.
for major 256-bit instruction usage, we need to set the CPU clock substantially lower or
CPU
noticeably
again.
increase the size of the power supply and fan. So after much discussion, we decided to go with a very different direction on PlayStation
Okay.
5. We built a GPU with 36
GPU,
CPUs. Mind
CPU.
you, RDNA
It's bigger than the PS4 one.
Are large. Each has 62% more transistors than the CUs we were using on PlayStation 4.
I feel this
So,
audience
if we
is
compare
real, but again,
transistor
I don't
counts,
know.
36 RDNA2 CUs equates to roughly 58 PlayStation 4 CUs. It is a fairly sizable GPU. Then we went with a variable frequency strategy for PlayStation 5, which is to say we continuously run
Can you
the
picture how
GPU
many kids are watching this and they're like,
we supply a generous amount of electrical power and then
hell
increase
is he
the
talking
frequency
about?
of GPU and
There's
CPU
probably a
until they reach the
majority of the audience is
capabilities of
probably
the
watching
system's
this. You're
cooling
likely
solution.
as a children.
It's a
We
completely
can
different
assume.
paradigm.
We can
Rather
assume,
than running at
right?
constant frequency and letting power
We can assume that.
variables on the workload,
I mean, even some of us
we run
older
at
people. I'm
essentially
21.
constant
A lot of us
power
older people
and
might
let
even be, you know,
frequency vary
like,
based on the workload.
what?
We then tackled the engineering challenge of a cost-effective and high-performance cooling solution designed for that specific power level. In some ways, it becomes a simpler problem because there are no more unknowns. There's no need to
We're
guess
gamers,
what
not
power
engineers.
consumption the worst case
I know, I
might
know.
have.
This is for like,
As
yeah,
for
but
the
they are deep
details of the
diving. They
cooling
are going as
solution,
deep as
we're
they
saving
can to
it for our
dive
teardown. I think
everything.
you'll be quite happy with what the engineering team came up with. So how fast can we run the GPU and CPU with this strategy? The
Okay.
simplest approach would be to look at the actual temperature of the silicon die and throttle
The temperature of the
frequency on that
silica
basis.
die.
But
Whoa,
that won't
what is
work.
that?
It fails to create a
The silica
consistent
die?
PlayStation 5 experience. It wouldn't do to run a console slower simply because it was in a hot room. So rather than
Oh
look
my
at the
god,
actual
another
temperature of
freaking
the
thing.
silicon die, we
CPU,
look at the
GPU,
activity
power
of the
control, and there's
GPU
these two
CPU
things in the
performing
middle that are
and
like,
set the frequencies on that basis, which makes everything deterministic and repeatable. While we're at it, we also use AMD's Smart Shift technology and send any unused power from the CPU to the GPU so it can
this
squeeze
man's
out
smart as shit, though. I can't deny. Y'all can clown him all you want. This man knows his shit,
are
though.
quite large. Running a GPU
I mean,
at
it
2
could be a reading off a
gigahertz was looking
presentation,
like
but
an
it's-
unreachable target with the
still.
old fixed frequency strategy.
I wouldn't
With
know any of
new
this.
paradigm, we're able to run way
GPU
over
frequency
that. In
kept
fact, we
at
have to cap the
2.23
GPU frequency
gigahertz.
at 2.23 gigahertz so
Okay.
that we can guarantee that the on-chip logic operates properly. 36 CUs at 2.23 gigahertz is 10.3 teraflops, and we expect the GPU to spend most of its
All right, have a good
time
one,
at
Dragon.
or close to that frequency and performance. Similarly, running the CPU at 3 gigahertz was causing headaches with the old strategy. But now we can run it as high as 3.5 gigahertz. In fact,
10.3
it spends
teraflops.
most of its time at that frequency. That doesn't mean all games will be running at 2.23 gigahertz and 3.5 gigahertz.
Does this
When
guy
that
expect us to
worst-case
build a
case
PS5?
arrives, it will run at a lower clock speed. But
Maybe he
not too
does.
much lower. To reduce power by 10%, it only
I mean,
takes
maybe he
a
expects
couple
us to
of percent
know-
reduction in frequency. So I'd
I need
expect
someone to
any
explain this in
downtime to
like,
be
you know,
pretty
the
mild.
common folk terms, you
All
know?
things considered, the change
Basically,
to the variable frequency
Faster
approach
game,
will show
less
significant
loading
gains
screen,
for
backwards
PlayStation.
compatibility.
The final of our 3 principles was about finding new dreams.
Oh, we're
It's
dreaming now.
important for us on the
Nice.
hardware team to find new ways to expand or deepen gaming, and that's what led us to a focus on 3D audio. As players, we experience the game through the visuals, through audio, and through the feedback we
Okay,
receive from the controller.
Let me
such
put it
as
this way.
rumble
If we get a
or lag.
reveal of what it looks like
Personally,
and
I
maybe a
feel
new
a
game
game is
reveal,
just
I'm
dead
okay.
without audio.
This was
Visuals
okay
are, of
then.
course, important,
If there's
but
no new
the
game
impact of
reveals, new
audio is
trailers,
huge
or
as
there's
well.
no new look at the PS5,
At the same time, the audio team
I'm gonna
on
have a heart
game
attack.
project has to do a lot with a little. For example, on PlayStation 4, there's fierce competition for the Jaguar CPU cores. Audio
Jaguar
typically ends
CPU.
up
Oh
getting
my
just a
goodness, I don't
fraction
understand
of
what
a
you
core.
mean.
That's not much of a computational resource, particularly when you consider
Computational.
that the visuals run
I
at
go to
30 or
college
60
and I'm
frames per
still
second,
lost.
But audio processing needs to happen at almost 200
You have to be
times
like an
per second.
IT major, just
So,
into all this
it's
to know
been tough
everything.
going making forward progress on audio with PlayStation
I know
4,
CPU and GPU,
particularly
but
when PlayStation 3 was such a beast when it
cell
came to audio.
processor.
The SPUs in Cell were almost a perfect device for audio rendering. Simple pipelined algorithms could really take advantage of asynchronous DMA and frequently reached 100% utilization of the floating point unit.
Can we
There's
get some
unfortunately
Xbox One in
nothing
the chat?
comparable
They
on
gotta have
PlayStation
more
5.
than this, I'm telling you. Don't
Probably the most dramatic progress in the
look at the
PlayStation 4
description of the
generation
stream.
has been with virtual reality. The PSVR hardware has its own audio unit. It supports about 50 pretty decent 3D sound sources. And this
PS5
provided
lead
a
system
hint
architect
as to where we
Mark
could go
Cerny
with
provides a
audio,
deep dive
as
in
well
PS5
as
system
some
architecture and how
valuable
we'll shape
experience.
future games.
Not to oversimplify, but here were our
People are
goals
not gonna
for
understand that.
audio on PlayStation
Hey, 115,000 likes. There's still 600,000
first
people
goal
watching
was great
them
audio
talk
for
about this, so.
not just VR users or soundbar owners or headphone users. That meant audio had to be part of the console. It couldn't be a peripheral. The second goal was to support hundreds of sound sources. We didn't want developers to have to pick and choose what sounds would get 3D effects and which wouldn't. We wanted every sound in the game to have dimensionality.
That looks cool.
And finally, we wanted to really take on the challenges of
Presence and
locality.
local.
Now, when we say
Locality.
presence, we mean the feeling that you're actually there. You've entered the matrix.
What's up, Hyper
It's not,
Memes?
of course, something we thought we could perfectly achieve, but the idea was that if we stopped using just a rain sound and instead used lots of 3D audio sources,
As long as they
for
show what it
raindrops
looks like,
hitting the
I'd call it a
ground,
dub.
all sorts of locations around you, then at some point your brain would take a leap and you'd begin
My
to
brain,
have this
that's my head
feeling,
right now. That's
this
my head,
feeling
and
of
that's
a
me
real
trying to explain,
presence inside the
understand
virtual
everything you're
world of the
saying.
game.
I'm like
This has
covered
the
in this mist
capacity to
cloud.
affect your appreciation of the game, just like music in a game does. The concept of locality is simpler. It's just your sense of where the audio is coming from. To the right of you, behind you, above you. This can immerse you further in the game, and it can also directly enhance the gameplay. To use Dead Space as an example, I know, old school. You're fighting
PS5 will
enemies
support the
in
top
fairly
100
dark, spooky
PS4 games at launch. So the
Back in
best
the
100
day, if you
PS4
played the
games are
game
going to be
using TV
supported at
speakers, you
launch.
could tell that there was one last enemy growling and hunting you down, but it was difficult
Last
to
of Us
tell
2 is
quite
definitely
where
gonna be
that
on it.
enemy was. With headphones, you could tell that the enemy
Bloodborne.
was somewhere on the right, which lets you deduce,
Uncharted,
if you couldn't
maybe?
see it, that it
Uncharted
must
4.
be somewhere behind and to your right. But with 3D audio with good locality, the idea is you know the enemy is precisely there, and you turn and you take it out. So, how do we know where a sound is coming from in the first place? Well,
I like to know
all
where
those
sound's coming
bumps
from.
and folds in the ear have a meaning, evolutionarily speaking. Based on what direction the sound is coming from, sound waves bounce around inside the ear, there's some constructive and destructive interference, and the
Some of
result
these memes are
is
absolutely
involved.
hilarious.
The phase of the sound
Yo,
also shifts,
thank you for the
depending on what
follow on
path the
Twitter.
sound wave took to reach the
May,
ear
if you guys want to follow me on Twitter,
These
DomTheBomb YT is
volume
my Twitter.
changes and phase shifts are different for each direction and also vary depending on the frequency of the sound. Head size and head shape also impact the sound in a similar fashion. The way that the sound changes based on direction and frequency.
Oh
can be
my God,
included
now
in
we're
the
seeing
table
color
called the
graphs.
head-related transfer
Whoa,
function, or
I'm tripping
HRTF.
out.
Here's part.
Am I high?
The vertical axis is the frequency. The horizontal
Whoa.
axis is the direction, front, back, left, right.
Bro, I'm
and the color
tripping.
gives the degree of attenuation of the sound at that frequency.
Oh my God, am I high now?
HRTF is as unique to an individual as a fingerprint is. In fact, you're looking at mine right now. Here's how we measure an HRTF. We've taken hundreds of people through this process. We put a microphone
Nah, bro,
in the
you
subject's
sick.
left and right
Yeah,
ear
right.
canals, and then sit the subject down in the middle of an array of 20.
What the hell is this I'm in?
We then
Whoa.
play an audio
It's like I'm getting my
stream
x-rays
from
when I
each
go to the
speaker
dentist.
as we rotate the subject. In the course of 10 or 20 minutes, we're able to sample the HRTF at over 1,000 locations. Using an HRTF when rendering audio creates unparalleled quality, but it's computationally expensive.
What the
The
fuck is
simplest
this?
way
There's
to
a
use an
globe.
HRTF
There's
is to
all these
process a
graphs.
sound source to
There's
make it appear as
output
if it's coming
going.
from one of those
Ooh.
1,000 locations
Input.
we sample. Unfortunately,
Fast
the processing has to be done in
Fourier
the frequency domain rather than the time
transform.
domain. So there's multiple fast Fourier transforms needed for every sound source, for every audio tick. That's a lot of multiplies. This computational complexity was the determining factor for our strategy. It meant we had to bite the bullet and design and build a custom hardware unit for 3D audio. Collectively, we're referring to the hardware unit and the proprietary algorithms we run on it as Tempest 3D Audio Tech.
Tempest
the meaning
3D
of 3D audio and technology should be pretty obvious here. As for Tempest, I feel it really reflects our goals with audio. It suggests a certain intensity.
I gotta give this man props for having the energy to do this, though.
Within it. We're calling the hardware unit that we built the Tempest engine. It's based on AMD's GPU technology. We modified a compute unit in such a way as to make it
Someone said
very
Sony's starting to
close
seem
the
clueless
SPUs
again.
of
I remember
PlayStation
those
3.
days back in
Remember when I
PS3
said
age.
that
Who
they
was in
were
charge of
ideal
marketing?
for
Someone
audio?
poked them with
So
the stick.
The Tempest engine has no caches, just like an SPU. All data access is via DMA, just like an SPU. Our target was that it would have more power than a CPU, thanks to the parallelism that a GPU can achieve, and that it would be more efficient than our GPU, thanks to the SPU-like architecture. The goal being to make possible near 100% utilization of the CU's vector units. Where we ended up is a unit with roughly the same SIMD power and bandwidth as all 8 Jaguar cores in the PlayStation 4 combined. If we were to use the same algorithms as PSVR, that's enough for something like 5,000.
Are these people in the background real? I have no idea, bro. I think they're fake.
More complex algorithms.
I think they're real.
Actually,
Actually, I think they're real, but it's hard to tell.
Of sounds. It would have been wonderful if a simpler strategy, such as using Dolby Atmos peripherals, could have achieved
Great audio
goals,
for
but
all,
we
hundreds of
wanted
advanced
3D audio
sound
for all,
sources present in
not
the
just
alley. Okay,
those
that's
with
good.
licensed
Good. Give us
sound
good
bars
audio.
over
That's
left.
what
Also,
I want to
we wanted
hear.
many hundreds of sound sources, not just the 32 that Atmos supports.
Please, okay.
And
If
finally,
this is
we wanted
this
to be
is
able
it,
to throw
they got to
an
have another press
overwhelming
conference like in a
amount of processing
month
power
or
of
so.
problem.
I'm
And it
telling
wasn't
you.
clear what any peripheral might have.
Because if this is their
inside
deep
of it.
dive, they need to do the short
In
one.
fact, with the Tempest engine, we've even got enough power that we can allocate some to the games, to the extent that games want to make use of convolution reverb and other algorithms that are either computational.
Oh, the Snoop Dogg video is the exact opposite.
High bandwidth.
Thank you for the sub, Sabias or
Primary
Sebas.
purpose of the Tempest engine
Probably not gonna be any
remains
Last
3D
of Us
audio.
stuff either.
Now, 3D audio.
All right, love
is
you.
a
Have a good one.
major academic research topic. It's safe to say that no one in the world has all of the answers. And the set of algorithms that has to be
Yeah, I think they're
invented,
moving because I
tuned,
saw
or
the one guy
implemented to
touching his
realize our
face, so I
vision
think
for
they're
3D
real.
audio is immense.
And if they aren't, then damn, they
For
designed it.
example, use of HRTFs in games is quite complex. Before, I talked about making a sound source appear as if it's coming from one of those 1,000 HRTF sample locations.
HTR.
But for high-quality
Oh
3D
my
audio,
God,
we
what
have
am
to
I
handle
looking
other
at?
Possibilities. The sound source might not
Oh,
be at one of the
Jesus
1,000
Christ.
HRTF sample
This is
locations,
like
so we have to blend
mass-
the HRTF data from
maximum
the closest
capacity that
locations
can
we have sampled.
Input sound
The sound
object.
source
A
might be
sync
moving.
based
Very
resemble. Ramp down,
special
ramp up.
handling is that
FFT. I don't know what the hell
blend
FFT is.
and that can cause
Accumulator.
phase artifacts in the
HRTFN.
resulting
HRTF
audio.
start.
Or the sound source might have a size to it, meaning it should feel as if it's coming from an area rather than a single point.
Last of Us 2 is May 29th.
There's also
There might
whole
be something. I
categories of
doubt it though.
approaches to
At this
handle.
point.
3D audio can be implemented.
Give me something.
using
Give me a game. Just give me
individual
one
processing of
game.
3D sound sources. But alternatively, ambisonics can be used for 3D audio. Ambisonics being somewhat like the spherical harmonics used in computer graphics.
Ambisonics. These look
And
like
finally, there's audio
flowers.
devices. The player might be using headphones,
Okay, there we
TV
go.
speakers, or have a
this is something I
higher-end surround
understand.
sound setup with 6 or more speakers, all of which need different approaches. That's a lot of variations. It's nice to have the computational resources of the Tempest engine, but it's clear that achieving our ultimate goals with 3D audio is going to be a multi-year, step-by-step process. Having said that, headphone audio implementation is largely complete at this time. It was a natural place for us to start. With headphones, we control exactly what each ear hears, and therefore the algorithmic development and implementation
did he?
were more
Arcade?
straightforward.
All right, let's get a like spike.
For
Make sure you drop a like,
TV
Carter. Thank you for
speakers and
subscribing,
stereo
dude.
Speakers, we're in the process of implementing virtual surround sound. The idea being that
And,
if you're sitting in a sweet spot in
subscribe to
front of
DomTheBomb,
the
It's Red Fusion. Thank you
then
for subscribing.
sound can be made to feel as if it's coming from any direction, even behind you. Virtual surround sound has a lot in common with 3D audio on headphones, but it's more complex because the left ear can hear the right.
I already got
speaker
headphones,
and
bro.
vice
These are my
versa.
Astro
We have a
A50s. These are like
basic implementation
$300,
of
but they're
virtual
wireless.
surround sound up and running. We're now looking.
I'm gonna
at
have to get new
increasing
headsets for the
size of
PS5
that
because I don't
sweet
think these are gonna be
spot, which is to say, making the area you need to be in to feel the 3D effect larger.
Yo, Lackey, thank you for
And we're
subscribing.
also working to boost the sense of locality. Headphone audio is the current gold standard for 3D audio on PlayStation 5, but we're going to see what we can do to bring virtual surround sound to a similar level, after which we'll start in on setups with more speakers, such as
Whoa,
6-channel.
this is a pretty cool audio setup, though.
It's now to the point where some of the PlayStation 5 games in
Okay,
development are
let's also
extensively
think if they
using
reveal the
system.
release date
One
of it,
the
that's a
game
dub
demos
too.
allows you to
Either
toggle
reveal the
between
release date,
conventional
show off a
PlayStation
game,
4 style stereo audio
or
and our new
could show off
3D
the,
audio.
you know,
I listened with just an
look of it.
ordinary pair of over-the-ear headphones, and wow, I could feel a difference. 3D audio has that dimensional feel to it. Conventional stereo audio feels
Or the price,
smashed
yeah,
flat
the
by
price.
comparison. The improvement is obvious. So, a big advancement, but have I entered the Matrix? Does my brain believe I'm really there?
The Matrix.
Like I was
What are we,
talking
in the
about
Twilight
earlier
Zone?
when I explained our target of presence. Well, the answer is no, but you've probably caught on to what's missing here, namely whose HRTF was being used. It wasn't
The
mine.
Scottish I just
It
saw.
was the default HRTF. The audio team analyzed the hundreds that they measured and chose the one they felt was the closest fit to the total game-playing audience. This shows a piece of the default HRTF on the left,
Yeah,
and my
a lot of-
HRTF on the right. You can see that the
This guy's
general
like, oh my
features
god,
are
it
the
happened.
same,
He
but
moved.
the details
The
are
guy that
quite
told me,
different.
oh my god, I'm getting
The
high
default
again.
HRTF, as I said, the 3D audio sounds pretty great.
HRTFS are
When I
different.
use my HRTF, though, the audio reaches a higher level of realism, which is to say that when using headphones and my HRTF, I occasionally get fooled and even think a sound is coming from the real world when it's actually coming from the game.
Okay, everyone agrees with me. This is more of a talk for the
Is that there are
developers,
few
not
people
not
whose
us in the
HRTFs
public.
are sufficiently far from the default HRTF.
Am I
That's
correct?
the
This should be
red
something they
dot
only
here,
reveal to the
that they can
developers.
toggle between PS4
Right?
style and PS5 style audio and not sense much difference. I've had a few people describe the PlayStation 5's 3D audio as sounding like a bit better stereo audio. Presumably, they're the ones at the very edges of this diagram. Which means what HRTF you're using is key. I'd like everyone to be able to experience what I'm experiencing, but obviously it's not possible to measure the HRTF of every PlayStation user.
Oh my
That
god.
means
So
HRTF
listen to this,
selection
chat.
and synthesis are going
The
to be
next
big
Call of
topics
Duty,
going forward
I don't know if this
as
is
the
going to be
Tempest
with it,
technology
is rumored to be a reboot of
PlayStation
Call of
5
Duty
launch,
Black
We'll be
Ops.
offering a choice of 5 HRTFs. There's a simple test where you pick the one that gives you the best locality. That's just the first step, though. This is an open-ended research topic.
They might be
Maybe you'll
rebooting Call of
sending
Duty
us a
Black
photo
Ops,
of
the
your ear,
original.
and we'll choose a neural network to pick the closest.
I just found that out
HRTF
on
in our
Twitter.
library.
There's a
Maybe
rumor.
you'll be sending us a video.
So just
of
like
your
Modern
ears
Warfare, it's going to
in
be
your
another
head, and we'll make
reboot.
a 3D model of them and synthesize the HRTF. Maybe you'll play
That's what I
an
just saw
audio
on
game
Twitter.
to
I'm like,
tune your
ooh.
HRTF.
So
We'll be
so Black
subtly
Ops 5 is going to
changing
be a
as you play
reboot of
and
Call of
hone
Duty
in on
Black
the
Ops 1.
HRTF that gives you the highest score, meaning that it matches you the best. This is a journey.
I think they're
we'll
calling
all
it
be
Black Ops
taking
5
together
based on
over
what I
the
read,
next
but
few
they're going
years.
to reboot it as
Ultimately,
Black
we're
Ops.
committing to
I don't know.
enabling everyone to experience that next level of realism. Hopefully, I've been able to illustrate a bit about our design
Oh,
and
please.
decision-making
If
process
that's it.
today, and why PlayStation 5 has the feature set that it does. Now comes the fun part. We get to see how the development
Yes,
community takes
the
advantage
fun part.
of that feature set. I'm hoping for the completely unexpected. Will it come from audio, ray tracing,
Okay,
the
come on.
capabilities of the SSD,
You build up.
or
You
something
build it
else?
up. Come
I
on.
guess we'll find out soon enough. Thank you for your time today.
That's it? Okay, I'm gonna walk away for a minute. I have to let my dog in. I just wasted 54 minutes of my life. did I just watch? Are you shitting me? F's in the chat. Everybody spam F's. My God. Everybody spam F's. He just... Oh, mother of God. Won't buy it.